everyone, and welcome back to This Was the Schmoedown. We haven't been here for a hot minute because life was lifing, but I'm Adelia, that's Josh. We're here to talk about this movie trivia league that we all love and all missed. And this week's episode is very interesting. How you doing tonight, Josh?
I'm doing especially good. We are pre-recording this at the time. The Knicks are up 2-0 and has won 2 road games in the final, so I'm doing especially good as a Knicks fan. Now, when this comes out, who knows how well my mood will be, but at the moment, I'm on cloud 9. I'm feeling really good.
Yeah, you and Ferris both. You and Ferris both are on cloud 9 right now. It'll be interesting to see how that series plays out. But we're not here to talk about the Knicks. We're here to talk about the top 10 Schmoedown individual legacies. Now, Josh and I decided on this topic and then didn't decide what the criteria of a legacy was, and then both came at this from totally different angles, which I think is great because a legacy can mean one thing to one person and it can mean a different thing to another person. And that's basically what we've got here. So Josh, you want to tell people what you used as the criteria for your list?
Absolutely, and I think it's great as well because when we're using different criteria, we're not going to be going over the same list. We're not going to have completely the same list, which I think is good. And we're talking about this on the pre-process, and I think it's going to make you get 2 different aspects of this. I took it from the more sports thing where it's I'm just going on mostly accomplishments. I'm going on how many title belts you've won, how many defenses you won. Did you win a tournament? Did you win a faction title? When you were on a team, were you good in multiple divisions? By the way, if you were on a team, were you the A player on the team? It's my brain is, when I think legacy, I think of the Michael versus LeBron arguments. I think of the top quarterback arguments of people saying, if Mahomes wins 1 or 2 more, can he beat Brady type of thing. I'm thinking if people have a top 10 basketball players of all time, where are they putting Kobe? Where are they putting Tim Duncan? Where are they putting Bill Russell and so on? And so I took it on that perspective where it's basically all accomplishments. It is all in some way, how can you quantify the play on the field?
Right. And I took it from a different angle. I thought of 3 questions, and that was who built the Schmoedown, who changed the Schmoedown, and who best represented it. What ties all 10 of the people on my list together is that the Schmoedown would feel fundamentally different without them. They left marks on it that extended far beyond the scores of the matches and accomplishments and things like that. So that to me is what legacy is all about. But we both came at it from different angles, and that's great. So we both have some honorable mentions before we get into our top 10 list. So Josh, you want to start out your honorable mentions?
Absolutely. And we're gonna also quickly before we get into that, once we have someone who is on both of our lists, we will have that discussion at the same time. We're not going to talk about, let's say, Rachel Cushing is on both of our list, which that would be my guess.
Right.
Is that we're not going to talk about Rachel in 2 different sections. We're going to talk in the same section. So to start off, one of my honorable mentions is Marisol McKee. Did you have Marisol McKee on your list?
I did not.
So Marisol McKee was a tough exclusion. She was very close. She had 1 belt win, 2 defenses. She was a part of the 2 corruption faction wins. She was the player of the year and had a free-for-all win. It was very, very close. The thing that excluded her on my list was, first off, just because of the short amount of time she was playing, it was tougher to build up the accomplishments when you're going against the top 10. And the second reason is really one division player. I think if she had more success in teams, she would be my number 10. But just because the team's record was so inconsistent, it was very tough for me to put her at number 10. The other honorable mention I had is Brendan the Kid Meyer. Did you have him on your top 10? Brendan was a very tough exclude because when you look at pure, this might sound hypocritical, he's got 2 belts wins, 4 defenses, and a tournament win. There's not a lot of players who have that stat line, 2 belts and 4 defenses. It seems like an obvious top 10 thing. The reason that excluded him in my list is, again, he's a 1 division player when it comes to legacy because he had a very inconsistent singles career, never really got close to the singles belt. And the other thing is those 2 belts and 4 defenses come from just Shazam. And the
Right.
reason why I didn't put him in my top 10 is I do take into account, are you the A player on your team when you get those accomplishments? And most people would agree that Brendan Meyer, as good as he was at Shazam, was never the A player on that team. It was always William
Right.
Big Johnny.
Right. Always Bibbs.
So if you look at some of Shazam's most memorable losses, they usually come from Brendan missing a final round question. So as good as Brendan was, it was a very tough exclude just because of those 2 factors. And then the last honorable mention I have, and I'm going to group them together. I don't have a Star Wars player on my list. I have Andrew DeMolanta, Alex Damon, and Thomas Harper all outside the top 10. And the reason why is I think they're so similar legacy wise, and there's arguments for both, for any of them. For Andrew, the argument against him is his lack of success early on, but he did beat Alex Damon twice. He has 2 belts and 2 defenses. Alex Damon was the most dominant. However, the minute he lost his title, he never got it back. And he never.
Right.
And because of that, it's very tough to be like, yes, you had this amazing run, but you never had a second act. DeMolanta was very inconsistent to begin with, but he did win the belt. And it would be easy to put DeMolanta at 10 if he didn't lose the belt to Harper. And Harper, again, is like Damon, where it's like Harper never lost a match and is clearly great. However, it's very tough for me to put someone with just 1 belt and 1 defense on the top 10 list.
Right.
And especially when you retire early and stuff like that. So all 3 of them have great accomplishments, but all 3 of them kind of cancel each other out in a way where it's tough to put one above the other. Like, I don't think you can put Harper above Damon because it's the same. They both had very dominant runs, but Damon had 1 belt and 4 defenses. But I can't put Damon above DeMolanta because DeMolanta beat him twice and has multiple runs. He got the belt back. But then again, I can't put DeMolanta ahead of Harper because Harper never lost and beat Damon. So it's like one of those things where they all cancel each other out. And because of that, I have them all 3 just outside my top 10.
Understandable. I have DeMolanta and Damon both in my honorable mentions. DeMolanta because, he helped define the Star Wars division's latter years. He did beat Damon twice. And he is the only 2-time Star Wars champion. Technically, because he won the belt at the last Schmoedown Spectacular, the last event ever. Alex Damon's on my list because not only, for honorable mentions, because not only is he arguably the most dominant champion in a division in the Schmoedown ever, he also expanded that into some pretty decent Inner Geekdom results. And but he didn't make my top 10 because he, like you said, never got the belt back, never got close to getting the belt back after he lost it. And Harper didn't make my list, either the list or the honorable mentions, simply because he played 1 season. And when I'm thinking of legacies, 1-season players that came in, had a fantastic run, are great. And Harper was fantastic. He's been a guest on many shows on this channel before. But I just don't know how much of a legacy he left for the Schmoedown. You know what I mean? By my definition of what a legacy is. So Harper didn't make my list. Was that all of your honorable mentions?
That was all my honorable mentions. You do a great point about the 1 season thing. I think if the Schmoedown kept going on and Harper and Marisol McKee kept playing, I think they were easily on track to be easy top 10 inclusions for both of our lists.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, Harper was a 1-season thing. Then he retired. He relinquished the belt. No one ever beat him for the belt. So it's a weird thing for me to judge as far as a legacy goes. My other names on my honorable mentions list are Jeff Snyder. Enormous impact through the Patriots. He was a top tier heel. He was great with the Odd Couple. He was pretty consistent teams player. He had an up and down singles career. There were matches where it looked like he got a category he didn't like and then just gave up. It was an interesting career in the Schmoedown for Jeff Snyder, but he did enough to make my honorable mentions list. So did Clark Wolf. Clark Wolf and the decision is one of the most standout moments from season 3 for me. It formed immediately 3 teams that were very interesting and all of that. We talked about that on our episode about the decision, so go back and watch that if you want some thoughts on that. William Bibiani made my honorable mentions. He was a fan favorite. He was one of the most recognizable competitors in the league because he was always... The thing that always struck me about Bibbs is he was always standing. He didn't sit down during matches. And that just made it instantly recognizable to me in every match for some reason. Like, that's the thing I focused on first was, oh, Bibbs is standing again. But he was a phenomenal competitor. He was a singles champion. He was teams champion with Shazam. He was pretty dominant in teams with Brendan Meyer, but just not quite enough done in singles for me to put him on my list. And my other honorable mention is Emma Fyfe. I think she's one of the most influential managers that the Schmoedown ever had. She set a standard for what a manager in the Schmoedown looked like that Shannon Barney took and then run with in the faction era. So she's on my honorable mentions list as well.
I think that's fascinating because other than Emma Fyfe, only because I don't have managers on my list, all the names you mentioned are on my list on some order. So we for those names we will probably get a little more in depth on the reasons why I have them on my list. And in fact, some of them was mentioned in your explanation on why I have them in my top 10. So I'm excited to get into that conversation.
Yeah. So why don't we start with number 10? Josh, you want to go first?
Sure. I think this will surprise some people because of my criteria, but I'm going to make the argument for it. I really struggled for who my number 10 is, and then I decided on Chance Ellison. Chance Ellison has two belts, no defenses. He won the faction era twice with corruption, and he has a tournament win. Now, reason why I have him, and when you look at 2 belts, 0 defenses, I have people off my list, like Brendan Meyer, who has 2 belts, 4 defenses. Even Marisol McKee, who I mentioned, has 1 belt, 2 defenses, stuff like that. Why do I have a player with only 2 belts, 0 defenses? The things that I think separates Chance from all the people I mentioned in my honorable mentions, first thing was he's a 3-division player. Not only was he extremely dangerous in singles, despite having an average singles record, he had if we go back and look at his, the opponents, he had one of the, biggest strengths of schedule when it comes to that type of stuff. He barely had any, easy matches. Almost every match he played, I think his first match was against Ethan Irwin, who, again, I didn't mention my honorable mentions, but he's, the first name that didn't make my honorable mentions. Yeah. Then we look at corruption. I took points away from Brendan Meyer not being the A player in Shazam. There's a really great argument that Chance was the A player in corruption.
Yeah.
Yes. Despite Mike being higher on the list, spoilers, I have Mike on my list. Chance was the more accurate player on corruption. And even some interviews, Mike would say, yeah, Chance held it down for us. He was able to keep us in by his round 1 performance in certain championship matches. He was awesome on corruption, and corruption is arguably one of the greatest teams of all time. And then the third thing is the 2 faction wins. He was hugely important for both of those faction wins, especially because one of them, he won an IG tournament. Mike, funny enough, has never won an IG tournament. Chance Ellison beat Mike in the finals to win an IG tournament. The fact that he has all these small things that kind of the no defenses is tough. The no defenses is the reason I almost excluded him. But the fact that he was a huge part of Shannon Barney winning the faction race twice. The fact that he was a 3-divisional player and was an awesome 3-divisional player to the point where he won an IG tournament and that was his weakest division by far. And the fact that he was the A player on one of the greatest teams of all time is why Chance is my number 10.
That's a great shout. Chance, probably one of the first players to miss my honorable mentions because he's not in my top 10. Because he is the fan that came to the Schmoedown. The first fan league player that came to the Schmoedown and became a major part of the Schmoedown. And that's a legacy that is pretty damn awesome. Plus all the accomplishments you just listed off. Chance was great. Chance, I think there is an argument to make, especially in like round one of teams matches, that Chance was definitely the A player between him and Kalinowski, because he always nailed round one, like really, really well compared to Mike, who sometimes stumbled in round one. Chance kept them in matches. Chance, just his presence, like cheering on other members of Corruption and helping train them and things like that. That's a legacy that I can definitely get behind. So yeah, Chance is a great shout.
Absolutely. Who's your number 10?
My number 10 is Ken Knapsack. Ken made my list because I think his legacy is often overlooked because it can't be measured in championships. I think instead Ken's legacy is found in the personality and the creativity that he brought in the Schmoedown's formative years. He helped establish the idea that competitors could be characters, storytellers, entertainers, in addition to just trivia players. He created memorable moments. He invested in the league's mythology and helped transform the Schmoedown from a simple game into like a shared universe between all these characters and stuff. Many of the elements fans came to love about the league were championed early on by Ken. I think his influence is far greater than his record might suggest. He is a past Star Wars champion. He was a manager. He was an announcer. Ken did practically everything for the Schmoedown, I think. And I think that's a legacy that needs to be celebrated more than it actually is.
Absolutely. And I love that we're talking about Ken right now, because if we were having the same definition of the list and if we were doing my thing, we wouldn't get close to talking about Ken, because accomplishments wise, Ken was never the most winning player. He was a part of one of the greatest title matches of all time, but he was never a winning player when it came to teams at the end of Star Wars. And I think after losing that championship, he never won another Star Wars match, if I remember correctly. But
I believe that's correct.
But he is by far on. As an announcer alone, he can be in the top 10 legacies because he was so iconic, so important, and like so great as an announcer, as a manager. He was a part of so many great storylines. I mean, the whole corruption thing is. We had a whole episode, by the way, dedicated to Ken Knapsack, just showing.
We did, yeah.
Why we think Ken was so important and crucial to the Schmoedown. And it's great because, like, again, I don't think we wouldn't even mention Chance as an honorable mention on your list, but on my list we wouldn't do that for Ken. So it's great that we're able to talk about this is honestly two vastly different ends of the spectrum, where mine is all about because Chance didn't do much when it came to like announcing or managing, but he was so killer as a competitor. And Ken didn't do much, honestly, as a competitor, but he was so killer on everything else about what made the Schmoedown great.
I agree completely. Josh, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is JTE. JTE has one belt.
JT's also on my list.
Nice. Where do you have JTE?
It's my number 3.
Ooh, number 3. So JTE has one belt, 6 defenses. And really, like, most of his championship success comes from the Patriots in that one run. And the reason why he's so low, because 6 defense is a silly number. 6 defenses is an absolutely silly number. The reason why he's maybe so low is because it was only one run. And I was almost going to put him lower, but, like, he still had a very good singles career where I believe he came... I don't think he ever played for the title, but I believe he was very killer in the Schmoedown singles tournaments, if I remember correctly. I think there was one where he came second to Rachel Cushing. What's it called? He also, he lost to Sam Levine, and then he played Rachel Cushing and Mike in the number one contenders match, and he held his own against Rachel. Held his own against Rachel. He was a very good singles competitor, honestly very similar to Chance, where despite having an average record, he still made a huge impact on singles. He's one of the greatest teams players of all time because not only about Shazam, but whenever he played a teams match like with Lon, he was also very, very good. Like he was an extremely competent team player. Really what it is, and this is the tough thing about JT, is it won again. The six defenses is crazy. There's some people who like Chance who never get who never get one defense. There are a lot of players that are going to be higher on my list that only have one or two defenses. Six defenses is a crazy number, and so you can't. It's tough, and like I even went between maybe him and Damon in some ways because they're very similar in a way when it comes to legacy wise. And really, the tiebreaker for me is that like I think JTA's single is better. Singles record, singles legacy is better than Alex Damon's IG legacy, and in the end, JT has six defenses. Alex Damon has four. You can make the argument that because Star Wars has less matches, the four is more impressive than the six. I went back and forth. This is one of those ones where it's like you can make the argument JT. You could kind of convince me either way if JT should be higher or lower on my list. I'm very conflicted about this, but JT is my number 9 just because that Patriots run is so insane, and he dominated that team's division for that stretch.
Yeah. JT is my number 3. Few competitors contributed more to the mythology of the Schmoedown than JTE, in my opinion. To me, his legacy extends far beyond the wins and losses because he became like woven into the fabric of the game itself. The existence of the JTE rule guaranteed that his name would be mentioned in every match, in every era of the competition, once it came into play. You add in the Patriots dynasty, the trial of JTE, which was an early thing that was a phenomenal like character kayfabe, whatever you want to call it, like trial because he did something wrong but got acquitted of it. His various mispronunciations, which were hysterical to listen to. He had countless memorable moments, and he had a unique ability to connect with the fans. And therefore you have someone whose influence reached every corner of the league. To me, he represents something rare, which is a competitor whose cultural impact on the Schmoedown may have actually exceeded his competitive accomplishments. And that's saying something considering the Patriots dynasty. So for me, that's why JT's number 3.
100%. I mean, all the points you made, when you look at the stuff outside the actual accomplishments, I totally agree and see why you have JT that high in your top 3. What's it called? It's interesting that he's so much lower on mine because his accomplishments are still insane. I can't say this enough. 6 defenses is an insane number.
Insane number. I don't think anyone else in the Schmoedown history got that many defenses of a belt.
2 people.
Two people.
2 people. First off, Snyder, because his defenses are the same as JT.
Well, right. But like somebody had more defenses of a belt than 6?
Yeah, Dan Murrell has 7, I believe.
Oh, that would make sense. He had so many reigns as champion. That would make sense. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But like it's insane accomplishments, insane cultural impact. JTE obviously belongs on both of our lists for those reasons.
Absolutely. So going, what is your number 9?
My number 9 is Christian Harloff. Because no discussion of Schmoedown Legacy is complete without its creator. And I put Harloff here and not Harloff and Ellis. I thought about putting Harloff and Ellis. But Ellis sort of took a step back from the running of the Schmoedown, I think, and was just more the announcer and a competitor. Christian, however, built an entirely new form of entertainment with this. He blended movie trivia, the sports presentation, pro wrestling influences, and he created a ton of community engagement, something that resonated with thousands of fans and competitors and spawned channels like the one you're watching right now, which was created because we were going to do a podcast about the movie trivia Schmoedown. Beyond creating the league, he spent years shaping its evolution. He introduced the new divisions because they had started with just singles and teams. He experimented with formats and he kept raising its ambitions. He set up the live events. He thought this could be huge. And basically every legacy on both of our lists traces back to the platform that he built. So that's why Christian Harloff's my number 9.
Absolutely. I mean, if I were doing a list based on your criteria, I might even have him higher. He might be like my number 2 or number 1, honestly, just because of that.
Yeah, he's a little lower on my list because I did factor in some like competitive stuff to the list, and he didn't have a ton of competitive experience in later years of the Schmoedown. But Christian definitely deserves to be on the list.
Absolutely. And also to quickly shout off his accomplishments. He did win the belt twice. He's one of the few people you can call a singles champion and a team champion, and he does have a tournament win. And if you look at who he beat to get that singles champion, not an easy road at all. So like I like have my list of every champion ranked or whatever, and like Christian's like just outside the top 25, like which is solid. You know, the only reason is, again, like, if we're doing accomplishments as well, it also was a different time. I do value you winning later versus you winning in the early years. And that might be also why JT is lower on my list.
Yeah, understandable. Who's your number 8, Josh?
My number 8 is your honorable mention. It's Classy Clark Wolf. Clark Wolf had 2 belt wins, 2 defenses. She was the Rookie of the Year. And the reason why I think I have her over JTE, despite JTE having 6 defenses versus her 2, is like Clark was able to do it with the Shire Wolves, and I think she was just vastly a superior singles player to JTE. And I kind of like
that.
I think like also her singles career is underrated because she never got the belt, but she was so close so many times. In fact, there was a moment where when Ethan is I believe this is against Clark, where Ethan is going to win on his first belt win. I believe this might be the tournament final or something like that, to play John Roca. He plays Clark, and Clark is about to win that game, to be honest. And like I believe it was one of the flubs, famous flubs, where it was and instead of if or something, it was like I'm forgetting the exact.
Something like that. I forget the exact one, but yeah, was it Southside with me when the title was Southside with you?
Yes,
yeah,
that is the one I'm thinking of. I think that is against Ethan, and if that miss thing isn't done, she beats Ethan Irwin, plays John Roca for the title, and like Ethan at that time was a monster, an absolute monster accuracy wise, and he looked unbeatable, and Clark was this close to beating him. So because of that, I always view her singles career. She also took Sam Levine, who is going to be very high on my list, to overtime in a championship match. What's it called? So in general, I think like Clark's singles career and the fact that she has the 2 belts and 2 defenses and was on a Shire Wolves team that was absolutely awesome. And like the fact that like I value this a lot is, can you have more than one run? And to me, Clark has had a lot of runs that maybe didn't end up in championships, but like got extremely close and also won the belt twice and has 2 defenses. I think the thing that puts her over JTE accomplishment lies on my list is the 2 belts versus JTE's 1. When you have 1 belt, that means you won it and never was able to get back to the top. She won it, lost it, and then got back to the top with the Shire Wolves. And because of that, I put her slightly above JTE.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Clark, obviously, tremendous player in both singles and teams. Teams with Wolves of Steel, teams with the Shire Wolves, and her singles career, she came so close, like you said, to getting that belt. So, great shout on Clark Wolf. Like I said, I have her on my my honorable mentions because she left the Schmoedown, like right before the faction era, and I just don't feel like her impact has as much of a legacy as like Rachel's does. And so that's kind of how she ended up in my honorable mentions. But yeah.
Sounds good. Who is your number 8?
My number 8 is Sam Levine. Sam's legacy, to me, comes from proving just how high the competitive ceiling of the Schmoedown could be. Before Sam, there were great players that won the championships, but when he arrived, he looked nearly untouchable. His undefeated run at first, combined with his leadership in Above the Line, created one of the first true dynasties in league history as far as a singles and teams player, and helped usher the Schmoedown into a new era of preparation and excellence. More importantly, he became a measuring stick for dominance. Long after his retirement, people still compared elite seasons to the standard he established. While his active career was relatively short compared to others on this list because he retired, then he came back as a manager, and then he played the last season, the impact of that first run he had was enormous. He showed what perfection looked like in the Schmoedown, and every player who came after him spent years trying to match it.
Absolutely. So it's funny we're going to have this conversation so much sooner than I expected. I have my Sam Levine at number one. And this is very tough for me as a Dan Murrell fan. And I really wanted to put Dan Murrell number one just to be biased. But
Yeah.
Sam Levine is the most dominant player in the Schmoedown history. He's the Michael Jordan of the Schmoedown, and there's a lot of comparisons to be had. The fact that he has 3 belts, I believe 5 defenses, a free-for-all win, 2 tournament wins, 2 player of the years. If you're talking about counting stats, Dan Murrell does beat him out. But, like, I will... The fact that he...
Here's what I'll say on that. Dan Murrell might beat him out on the stats, but the impact of Sam's stats, to me, weighs a little heavier for accomplishment-wise than the impact of Dan's.
That's a great point. And, like, I think it's a little of that. And the fact that he retired and came back, immediately got the singles champion, and never lost it is absolutely insane. Like, the way I compare that is, like, what if Michael Jordan... the season he unretired and went to the Wizards, the second unretirement, not the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think that, like, the Schmoedown, like, the time between his first run and his second run is comparable in the NBA to, like, it was a completely different league.
It was a completely different league, yeah.
And the fact that if Michael Jordan went back to the Wizards and won the championship with the Wizards on his first run, that is like the insanity of Sam Levine immediately coming back, immediately winning the championship. He still has, despite the short amount of time he played, he still had 3 belts, 5 defenses, which is a very, like, really, like, there's very few people who can rival him in that alone. The only 2 people we're going to talk about in the GOAT debate, Whip Murrell and Kalinowski. And it was very tough for me to, again, put Levine. But, like, the fact that he was a singles and doubles champion at the same time, the fact that he was so dominant with above the line in his singles matches, and the fact that he beat Rachel Cushing and Clark Wolf both in overtime, and then retires, becomes a great manager. And I'm not counting the manager thing, but if you do count the manager thing, he was a pretty solid manager. And then and then unretired and immediately wins the belt and has a couple more defenses. And then I don't know how much I count this because I have very, and I think I've talked about this on this channel a lot, very mixed to bad feelings about the last Schmoedown Spectacular. And Dan does play Sam, and Sam beats Dan in the championship match, I believe. And that is very mixed for me, very, very mixed for a lot of reasons. But in the end, that did happen. Like, Sam did beat Dan in the final one, and it is 1-1 because Dan did beat Sam beforehand, and it's very close and very difficult. But I think the dominance of Sam's wins and the fact that he did in a shorter time, and Dan's counting stats is better, and it's very tough for me to do this, but, like, I do put Sam as my number one in the end.
That makes sense.
Close.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's close. It's really, it's paper thin between Murrell and Levine. I understand why he's your number one. To me, the large section of time that he wasn't in the league is what puts him down the list for me. Because if he had stayed as a player or he had immediately transitioned to a manager after retiring, he'd be much higher on my list. But because there was such a long section of time without Sam in the league, I put him a little lower.
Here's my question for you. If you were doing just accomplishments, would you have Sam Levine as your number one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would. Because like I said, I think the impact of Sam's accomplishments is a little more, lack of word, impactful for the legacy than the impact of Dan's accomplishments. Because Dan was the standard for a long time, but when Sam came in, Sam was the perfection standard. Sam was the, you don't miss many questions against him or you're dead as far as this match goes standard. Dan sometimes had off matches. Dan could lose a match to Andrew Guy that no one expected him to, you know, stuff like that. I just think that the impact of Sam's, like, undefeated run. Dan never really had one of those. In singles and in teams, like it's pretty crazy to think about Sam's accomplishments.
Absolutely. I think what really did it for me in the end is that like I think Dan slightly beats Sam, or it's close. It might be similar in singles. I think Dan slightly beats Sam in singles, but Sam absolutely dominates Dan in teams.
Dan and
And it
teams.
might be a different story if this Schmoedown continued on and Dan went on. He always wanted to do IG. If Dan ever went to IG and had like a legitimate run, that might have like.
And Dan
been the
became a
tiebreaker.
3-division player. If Dan had become a 3-division player, he would top Sam for me. But yeah.
But that's the thing, is he never did, and because I think the Sam's team run is just he's done because, and I think this is going to be, but when it comes to the GOAT debate, it's you're picking like things. The fact that Danger Zone never really won a title or had so much, like that's tough. That is tough. And Sam Levine, like above the line, is just Dan never has met that dominance of where above the line was.
Yeah, I agree. So Josh, who's your number 7?
Another one of your honorable mentions is Jeff Snyder. So Jeff Snyder wasn't one of my favorite players, but when you look at the accomplishments, he has 3 belt wins, 6 defenses, 1 tournament win. The difference between him and JTE is the odd couple. And the odd couple is enough to put him above Clark as well, is because Jeff had one of the greatest ones as all time with the Patriots, and also then came back and was a 2-time champion with the odd couple. The odd couple never defended, and if the odd couple defended once, I might have him even higher. But because the odd couple was one of the few teams that can go toe to toe with Shazam in their prime. And you can make the argument, and I think most people would, is that like if we are doing a purely teams division legacy or accomplishments, Jeff Snyder's number 1.
Yeah.
Like if we're talking about who accomplished the most in the teams division, it's Jeff Snyder.
It's Jeff Snyder.
It's Jeff Snyder. It's probably not close.
Yeah. I agree. I completely agree. Jeff Snyder, to me, one of the most interesting characters in the Schmoedown. I just don't know, like, when you think about the Schmoedown, like, one of the first names that jumps out at you, to me, is not Jeff Snyder as far as, like, impact goes. He was a fantastic player. He was a fantastic player. He had a lot of really good results and everything, but his character was never much of a character, and his, like, he was great at the trivia. I don't think he was great at the rest of it. He was a smarmy heel. He was pretty good at that, but like how much of that is just who Jeff Snyder is? Because like if you watch anything of Jeff Snyder outside of the Schmoedown, he's basically that same kind of dickish kind of guy. Don't come after me, Jeff Snyder fans. It's just my opinion. But yeah, I just think he didn't have enough of a cultural impact on the Schmoedown to make my top 10.
I completely agree. I think like the issue with Snyder is he was playing an amplified version of himself. It felt like an amplified version, and you can do that, and that's fine. But it's tough to have that be a very memorable character. And I think part of the issue, and by the way, I also didn't mention Snyder had a very, very good singles career. He almost took the belt from Paulo Yama in that run. I should mention that where he has a better singles career than JTE does, and comparable to Clark. I would probably put Clark slightly better, but the fact that he dominates certain teams as well. I think the other thing is like if you look at the impact he's had, you can make the arguments Snyder's impact is not. We're talking about legacy outside the accomplishments. It was complaining about the questions. It was the thing I remember about Jeff Snyder is not 100% positive. It's complaining about the questions, and that's not a great like when you kind of like complain about the questions multiple times and kind of do that type of thing. To me, that detracts from your legacy for better or for worse. It makes you a better heel in the moment.
It negatively impacts like how you think about him when you think about him in the Schmoedown, because like all he did was complain. It felt like, and that I don't want to celebrate that, you know.
I completely agree. I think like it's one of those things, and I have this opinion on the Schmoedown is that like you can be a good heel without complaining about the question writers because it's really punching down, and like it is what it is. I feel this way about sports in general. I think complaining about the refs is never likable. It's not something we should normalize. That's a duh. And like I know they sometimes get it extremely wrong, but that is the nature of sports. Sometimes the questions are unfair, and that is the nature of the Schmoedown. But complaining about it to the people who like the question writers are the unsung hero of the Schmoedown, and like it's one of those things where it's just cheap. It felt cheap to complain about the questions, and maybe in the moment that just is what it is. Like there are people who will play pickup sports, and we have these volunteer referees, and they will complain to them. This is just sometimes what happens in sports. And I don't think him complaining about that type of stuff was a character thing. I do think that was in the moment frustration thing, and I understand that. That's
100%.
very human. That's very human. However, it's just like when you're an athlete and you're doing this on a public stage. I just think you can't. That's just an unspoken rule that you shouldn't cross, and there's a reason why when coaches or players complain about the referees, they get fined thousands of dollars.
Yeah, 100% agree. My number 7 is Kevin Smets. Smets to me transformed preparation from a strength of some people into an arms race between everyone. His approach to studying fundamentally altered how competitors viewed the game and pushed the league towards a new level of professionalism, I guess you could say. The IG division became deeper, more competitive, and more demanding because of the standards he established. The early Intergeekdom competitors, like I remember a match with Hector Navarro where he just sort of showed up and was ready to like go based off his knowledge, and he got slaughtered because he wasn't prepared. He hadn't studied. He hadn't thought about it. Smets made the division more demanding because of the standards he established, and I think he pushed Mike further into the studying than Mike was maybe going at the time. Beyond his achievements, he became one of the most respected and beloved figures in the community. Of course, he went through Smash Cancer, that whole situation. When he came back, everyone was so excited, and he made an impact with that, with sharing his journey through having cancer and Smash Cancer and all of that, the community's 24-hour stream, everything that came together around Smets when he announced that he had cancer. It not only united the community in a cause, it made a bunch of people in the community go get checked to make sure that they were okay. Some of them found out that they might not be, like he made an impact culturally on the community that no one else in the Schmoedown ever did. And I think that between the two things with him helping with the studying moving forward, and the Smash Cancer stuff, his impact on the Schmoedown is almost unquantifiable. But because he had so little time actually competing in the Schmoedown, I have him a little lower down on the list.
Absolutely. So, like, Kevin Smets, accomplishment-wise, is one of the greatest IG players of all time. The reason why I don't have him on my list, and I agree with you, everything Adelia said about his impact on the league. The reason I don't have him on my list is it's very tough for me to put him above the Star Wars players when it comes, because he was a one-division player who was very dominant, but did have his losses. And, like, I'm not, and because if I'm not going to put the Star Wars players on the list, I'm not going to put him there. And, like, it's tough because he's a great player, but the issue is the no defenses is when you come to the pure accomplishments is in my opinion, like, to be close to the top 10, no defenses is a huge and that shows how much I think of Chance is the reason why I'm number 10 with no defenses. But Smets, in my opinion, did not accomplish as much as Chance did by being a 3-divisional player, by being a part of a 2-time winning faction, and by succeeding that successfully in all 3 divisions. Smets was an awesome, extremely dominant player. And if we go through like our 11 through like 20 to 25. It's a lot of great dominant players who were
Absolutely.
awesome
Yeah.
champions within the Schmoedown, and Smets it fits within that. Like he's 100% a top 20 player. He's not a top 10 player in my mind when we're talking about pure accomplishments.
Pure accomplishments. Yeah. I completely agree with what you said there. The weight of accomplishments is a thing that a lot of people like to, argue about in actual sports. Like, this player from this era was better than this player from this era, and how can you tell? Because the games were very different between the two eras, stuff like that. I think you can make that argument with Schmoedown eras as well. But Chance is a 3-division player over Smets is a 1-division player. I see why Chance made your list and Smets didn't. But like, as far as like impact and influence and like things that I went for on my list, Smets obviously had to be here.
Absolutely.
What's your number 6, Josh?
This might be controversial because a lot of people have this player when we're talking about pure accomplishments on the Rushmore of Schmoedown. I don't. This is John Roca. He has 4 belts, 1 defense. I think really what kills Roca, and the reason why I have him above Snyder, who has 3 belts, 6 defenses, which this is going to be weird. Sometimes when we have these lists and people have these discussions in sports, it's a little eye testy, and this is a little eye testy. I just watched John Roca play the Schmoedown, and I just never thought that Snyder was a better player than Roca. And I think Roca was more continuously good, despite Snyder being and Snyder beat Roca in his Patriots run in teams a lot. And like if we're talking about pure teams, Roca is nowhere close to the team player that Snyder is. And
Roca is a much better singles player than Snyder, though.
Mostly. He's a 2-time belt holder. Snyder's a 0-time belt holder, but it's close. I mean, not close maybe because again, Roca won the singles belt a couple times. And Snyder never won it. But like quality-wise, maybe. When I was making this list, I just couldn't in my right mind put a Snyder ahead of Roca when I felt like when I was doing these lists and thinking about these players while they were playing, I never had Snyder ahead of Roca type of thing. The issue with Roca when it comes to the top 5 is the person in my top 5 who has the least amount of defenses is 2. You need to have 2 defenses, in my opinion, to get to the top 5. The fact that Roca never gets a defense in team. Does he? No, his only defense is in teams. He never gets a defense in singles, and like he's always a great player, but like the lack of defenses is really tough. The 1 defense is really really tough, and we're going to talk about the player most likely who I have with 2 defenses. And spoiler alert, it's Cushing. Cushing's a 3-divisional player. Roca is not a 3-divisional player. And even then, Cushing is not like top 3 in my list. So it's one of those things where it's like the 1 defense and the fact that like even that 1 defense is like Founding Fathers is a very good team. A lot of people do not have the Founding Fathers in their top 3 teams of all time. Like I don't think John Roca is remembered as a teams player. And Roca is known as a singles player, and he never got a singles defense. He's a great, great player, but and even though he was playing constantly throughout the seasons, it did feel like at a certain point that the league was, I don't want to say passing him by, but he wasn't as dominant as he was early on. And even his dominance early on has 0 defenses. The part of the way we talk about dominance is defenses, and he just doesn't have enough defenses. That being said, the fact that he is number 6 despite only have 1 defense, he does have 4 belts. He is one of the greatest players of all time, and he is one of the players that was the most committed. I mean, as Roca's impact as a singles player, as a teams player, he's one of the greatest players in the Schmoedown. He was consistent. The fact that being introduced in the Schmoedown early on, it was consistently at the top. He was consistently fighting for a belt, and he didn't always get there, but he was consistently a threat and so very good despite the Schmoedown changing around him. He is one of the greatest Schmoedown players of all time.
Yeah. He's my number 1.
Interesting.
I think that Roca simply wasn't one of the league's biggest stars. He helped define what a Schmoedown competitor looked like. Starting in season 3, when he first became the outlaw. He brought an intensity, a swagger, and emotional investment that turned matches into events sometimes. Whether he was leading the Four Horsemen, whether he was battling Dan, or then teaming with him in Founding Fathers. When he was with Matt Nost in Top 10 battling the Patriots, he cut promos that felt like wrestling segments. He helped establish the culture of character work and storytelling in the league. And to me, more than perhaps any competitor in the league, he embodies the idea that the Schmoedown was as much about storytelling as it was about the trivia. And I can't think of a player that did that for me, that made me understand the kayfabe aspect of the Schmoedown more than John Roca. So that's why he's my number one.
Absolutely. I mean, he was, speaking of Roca, the match that got me into Schmoedown was Merle versus Roca. That was the match that got me into Schmoedown. Roca beating Merle and winning that belt. And I was rooting for Merle, but Roca's commitment and intensity to the Schmoedown is almost unmatched. And we give a lot of credit to Ben Bateman for the first, studying of the Schmoedown and commitment to the Schmoedown. But, the people who took it really seriously, one of the first people to do it, and we should give credit to, is absolutely John Roca.
So where are we at? My number 6?
Yes, I believe so.
My number 6 is Ben Bateman. I think his legacy lies in revolutionizing how competitors approached not just the studying side of the Schmoedown, but also the entertainment side of the Schmoedown. When Team Action burst on the scene, other players had obviously played heels, villains, whatever you want to call them, in the Schmoedown before, but Bateman, to me, mastered the art of blending character work with elite competition. Fans loved him, they hated him, they argued about him, but they tuned in whenever it was a Ben Bateman match. He understood that every match was part of a larger narrative and used that understanding to become one of the defining figures of the faction era. Schmoedown competitors who embraced character-driven storytelling after him owe a significant debt, I think, to the blueprint that Bateman created. So he's my number 6.
Absolutely. In accomplishment-wise, he only has one belt and 0 defenses. So accomplishment-wise, he is very far away from some of the other players we're talking about. If you only win one belt, it's kind of tough to get into the top 10. But he has 3 tournament wins, which is crazy, to be honest. He's one of the greatest tournament. He's one of the greatest tournament players of the Schmoedown. If we're talking about just pure tournament season, and a lot of his legacy was built on that. He also free for all MVP, a very underrated part of it, and he's a part of some of the most memorable matches, tournament matches of him. I mean, championship matches of him blowing out Paul Oyama and his battles with Merle for the singles belt.
Also, his battles with Andrew Guy, like the one that took place at the Houston Live event in a literal wrestling ring where he just destroyed him. That's seared into my brain as one of those settings in the Schmoedown that was awesome and cool, and a match that you had so much hype for that someone came in and just bulldozed their opponent when you weren't expecting it. That's one of the standout Bateman matches for me.
100%. So my number 5 is William the Beast Bibiani.
Okay. In my honorable
he has 3 belts, 4 defenses, 1 tournament win, 2 free-for-all MVPs. I talked about this about my honorable mentions with Brendan Meyer. To me, he was the clear A of Shazam, and Shazam is arguably the greatest team of all time. He has a singles belt. He does have 1 singles belt, and he has the defenses. He has the 4 defenses. What really separates him and Roca, in my opinion, is Roca has 4 belts, Bibiani has 3, but Bibiani has 4 defenses, and Roca has 1. Bibiani's in the conversation for one of the greatest teams of all time. Roca is not in that conversation for singles or teams. He's up there in the top 5 or 10 for both, maybe. But the issue is, if we're talking about, are you in the conversation for the greatest? Bibiani can be in the conversation for the greatest team of all time. Roca is not in that conversation, and that's why I have Bibiani slightly ahead of Roca. And I do account the free-for-all MVPs as something. I think that is, shows his knowledge, and he is truly was a beast trivia wise, and he had a very, very solid singles career despite a rocky start. He's a singles champion. And again, if we're talking about Snyder as the clear number one, there's a good argument that Bibiani is somewhere between 2 to 5 in that greatest teams players of all time.
I would agree with that. Yeah, 100%. Bibbs, to me, obviously one of the greatest players in the Schmoedown teams division. Obviously a singles champion. I never felt he was playing a character. Even when he was like the guy that betrayed Roca and them, or was it the Lion's Den? I don't remember. But the guy that betrayed them and then joined up with Whitney Seibold and had Ricky Hayberg as
it was
manager
the Horseman.
and formed the Growling Command. The Horseman. Yeah, the Horseman. I couldn't remember. Even when he was that guy, like, I didn't buy it. Like, I didn't think he would... He bought into the character enough to sell it to me, you know what I mean? So I was really happy when they sort of abandoned that sort of, like, heel persona and made him and Whitney, like, good guys. And I loved his team with Brendan Meyer. I love Shazam. They're one of my favorite teams of all time. I just don't think that Bibbs the only thing I can think of for, like, legacy things with Bibbs are the entrances.
Absolutely.
And that like just wasn't enough to... And the free-for-all. But that just wasn't enough to make my list. One of the greatest players, one of my favorite players, but just not enough of a complete legacy to make my list.
I completely get that, and to your point, he did play a character, just not well, to be honest. Like, he wasn't a great heel, and then what he was in my opinion, an amplified version of himself, most likely.
Yeah.
And that, again, when it comes to amplified versions of yourself, sometimes it's easier and better to play, but that is very tough to pull off in a way that's, like, extremely memorable. He was a very underrated face, but faces in general are tough to pull off. To be like an amazing face. And like, to be honest, when I think of the greatest face, I think more about Coy and the Kid more than Bibbs. And like, that's not and that's not a knock on Bibbs. It's just
none of this is a knock on Bibbs. It's just other people did what he did character wise better.
Yeah. But
that's
overall,
not a knock on Bibbs though.
Absolutely, but talking about pure accomplishments, he's in my top 5. 3 belts, 4 defenses. The only reason he's not in the top 4 because the top 4 does do, like, their accomplishments are, and his top 3 accomplishments are insane. There might be an argument for him to be number 4 even, as I get into my number 4, which is Rachel Cushing. Where do you have Rachel on? I assume you have Rachel on your list.
We didn't do my number 5 yet.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I've got ahead of myself. What is your number 5?
My number 5 is Dan Murrell. To me, Murrell's legacy comes from being the measuring stick against which every other player was judged when Sam Levine was not around. For years, nearly every major story in the Schmoedown eventually circled back to one question. Is that person going to be able to beat Dan? His dominance elevated the prestige of the singles championship and created a standard that competitors chased throughout the league's history. Beyond the victories, Dan's professionalism, consistency, and sportsmanship gave the Schmoedown a legitimate competitive foundation. Every era in sports or movie trivia needs a king, and for most of the Schmoedown's existence, Dan occupied that throne. He was a good teams player, but not great. And I just think that he has a legacy that very few people can match in the Schmoedown.
Absolutely. He's my number 2. He's my number 2 because when we're talking about pure accomplishment, he won the belt 6 times. 6 times, which is absolutely insane. The only person who comes close is Kalinowski with 5. He won the belt 6 times. He defended it 7 times. He won it 6 times, defended it 7 times. He won a free-for-all MVP as well, won a tournament, and was the player of the year twice. Just truly insane counting stats. If Dan Murrell is, if Sam Levine is Michael Jordan, then Dan Murrell's LeBron. Like, that is like the comparison I always made because like the Dan Murrell the fact that he was able to do this for so long and be so great within the Schmoedown. The fact that, by the way, he was able to, one of the most underrated times he won it, he beat Adam Collins after Collins beat him for the belt.
Yes.
There, if he doesn't have that win against Collins, you can maybe be like, but Dan's time was behind him, but like he had a very good run. He beat Collins for the singles belt after Collins beat him. And even though we're like, Dan had an okay singles career, his team's career is similar to Roga's, which is one belt and one defense. He had a team's belt defense, which not a lot of players have.
Yeah.
It's like the pure counting stats is absolutely insane. If we're talking about pure counting stats, and we're talking just pure analytically, he's the number one, and it's not close. 6 belts and 7 defenses, absolutely insane.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Dan was an incredible player, and I think he had a legacy that's worth celebrating for sure.
100%.
Okay, Josh. Now you have Rachel Cushing at number 4. You said.
I do have Rachel Cushing at number 4.
So do I.
What? Oh, great minds think alike.
Exact same.
She is
our first exact same number.
Funny how that works. I think we both kind of wanted to put her on the Rushmore of our list subconsciously. Because a reason why I have her ahead of Bibbs, she has 3 belts, 2 defenses, and is Rookie of the Year. Now, Bibbs has 3 belts, 4 defenses. If we're talking about pure accomplishments, you can make the argument, well, Bibbs has 4 defenses, Rachel has 2. The 2 things that put Rachel ahead of Bibbs, in my opinion, is number 1, 3 division player, which is obvious. She was really, really, really good in 3 divisions when Bibbs was only 1. 2. And then the other difference is like part of the reason Bibbs was able to have great counting those 3 belts and 4 defenses and type of stuff is because he was just in the league longer. To be honest, he had more swings at the bat than Rachel. Rachel was able to have a very similar legacy in more divisions with less time in the league. Like again, it's also going to be an eye test thing. When Rachel was in the league and Bibbs was in the league, there was not a moment I put Bibbs ahead of Rachel. Rachel was one of those players where you just eye test wise, you watch her and you're like, that might be the best player in the league. Like she can do IG, she can do team, she could do singles. Eye test wise, I'm never going to. If you didn't watch Rachel Cushing in her prime, you just won't get it if you just look at the stats alone and that she had a shorter career. She was part of one of the greatest teams of all time. She was a great IG player and one of the greatest IG players of all time. And she took Sam Levine, my number 1, to overtime. I think she's a player that I think every single player in the league feared her as a competitor. I think eye test wise, the fact that she was a 3 division player, the fact that, to be honest, when she was in the league, she just felt dominant, and she did get 3 belts in two defenses. So because of that, I have Rachel Cushing in my number 4.
Rachel for me changed perceptions about what women were like in the Schmoedown. There were extremely talented women in the Schmoedown before Rachel, but after Rachel, there was no longer any debate about whether women could dominate at the highest level of the Schmoedown. Her rise through Inner Geekdom and her entire storyline with Knapsack going from Nerds Watch through almost beating the team of Mark Andraco and Robert Meyer Burnett single-handedly, even though it was supposed to be her and Knapsack against the 2 of them, to the split that showed she could do some character work, even if it was a little. Still, she was just Rachel. She didn't really have a character, but she did the storyline, which let Ken show off his character abilities. And then her partnership with Clark Wolf and the Shire Wolves. It created one of the most beloved stories in league history. More importantly, to me, she became a role model for future competitors. She helped to broaden the league's appeal. Her legacy isn't simply that she won championships, like Josh pointed out. It's that she expanded what people believed was possible within the Schmoedown. Because before Clark and Rachel won the team's belts as the Shire Wolves, there were a lot of people saying there should be a women's league. Why aren't there a women's league? Why are women in this league? I saw those comments on YouTube and on Twitter and everywhere else so much. And then Clark and Rachel got the belt and dominated. Your thoughts on Rachel's impact outside of just accomplishments?
Absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. I mean, I think she played the like betrayal of the nerd of Ken not showing up so
And
extremely well that like
yeah,
that one moment is one of the most memorable character moments of the Schmoedown. And
yeah,
like because of that alone, 100%, and like truly, like she was an inspiration to all of us just because of how dominant and like it felt like she was a person that was very relatable as well because she wasn't someone
yeah.
who came in from like the content who was a huge character. She was someone who was just really good at movie trivia and killed it and was like accepted that like on that like that like oh this isn't my forte but I'm going to do my best when it comes to the character stuff and like she truly was awesome in every way and one of my favorite players to watch.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, have we done your number three, X? We've done my number three.
I my number three, no, it's the last person on my list, and that is Mike Kalinowski. Mike
He's
Kalinowski,
my number two.
yes, he might be the last player on both of our lists. Is that correct?
He is. He is. Yeah.
Absolutely, and what a there's no more prolific name to end it off on. Mike is absolutely in the conversation for the GOAT. I know a lot of people have Dan as the GOAT, Sam as the GOAT. Not a lot of people have Mike as the GOAT. Mike is just as accomplished, if not more so, than both of them, and I 100% understand the argument for Mike as the number one. Mike has 5 belts, which is crazy. 3 defenses, 2 faction wins, and he's definitely the greatest, in my opinion. If we're talking pure accomplishments, the greatest 3 division player of all time. He's the greatest IG player of all time. And he was a part of one of the greatest teams of all time in corruption. He was a. I'm sure you'll get into this when you talk about the legacy outside of the game. He was a part of the greatest storyline of all time. And to be honest, like his singles thing is always what in. If I'm being honest, the singles thing is the issue for me. His singles, even though he's a 3 divisional player, he never felt like the top 10 singles players in the
I
league.
don't think he ever made it to a singles championship match.
He didn't. He got close 2 times, and the issue is those 2 times when it lost. The first one was the 3-way between JTE and Rachel Gushing, and to me, this might be silly. The way he lost that 3-way to JTE and Rachel Cushing is a huge argument. It's like the LeBron losing to Dirk in that finals in a way. It's like that is a loss that is so bad that it takes away from your legacy and it makes it tougher
Yeah.
to argue for when you were so, I don't want to say outmatched, but he was that badly beaten against Rachel and JT in singles. And those are 2 players, by the way, who never won the singles belt, despite being very respectable singles players. And then the second time is he did almost beat Jeff Snyder to go against Paulo Yama in the championship. But that was the Flash Gordon moment. And again, that was, in a different way, a spectacular way to fail in singles. So, like, he was never a super accurate player, but he had his moments and he didn't take advantage of them. That being said, in teams, he definitely did. We're talking about the Founding Fathers as a great team, and the reason why like we can have Dan and Roka so high is because they were able to get that team's belt with the Founding Fathers. Corruption, for the most part, won the rivalry with the Founding Fathers, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The Founding Fathers had to use a free-for-all shot that Dan won to challenge
To get a
Corruption.
storyline, yeah.
Absolutely. So, like, Mike in Corruption was a team that took Shazam toe to toe. Was a team that was I believe a team that beat the Shire Wolves. And if we're talking about IG, I think most people would agree he's the IG GOAT. Like I think maybe some people would say Smets, but for the most part, I think everyone would agree that like accomplishment-wise, IG GOAT goes to Kalinowski. And also, this is maybe a huge part when we're talking about Dan and Sam, even Rachel, Bibiani, Roka, none of them won a faction title. Mike was the best player on 2 faction winning teams out of 2. There was no other best player on a faction winning team other than Mike. because Shannon won the faction title twice, a lot of that is due to Mike as well. He was the best player on both those teams, most people would argue. Maybe some would argue maybe Marisol or Adam on that run, especially Adam Collins' single run. But, like, Mike was the face of corruption, and he was an incredible player, and I give him a lot of credit for winning those two faction titles. In my opinion, those two faction titles you could argue is an equivalent as one belt. I think there was a lot of great arguments. The fact that he's a 3-division player, Sam and Dan aren't. The fact that he has 2 faction wins. The fact that, to be honest, even you can make the argument that his singles career, he had some turning point moments. The reason why I have him as my number 3 is when we go back to that singles career, he did not take advantage of those moments. The fact that he lost so badly to JT and Rachel and the Flash Gordon thing. But if it went the other way, in either of those things, I think there's a very real argument. Because I think there's a very real argument that Kalinowski beats Paul Oyama in that New York event. Because Snyder did kind of like fall apart with Harry Potter and stuff like that. Like, I think there's a real chance that
Kalinowski would beat him.
Yeah, especially because Oyama did not have a great performance as a singles champion. So, like, and at least getting to the title match, I think you can make the argument he's number 2 or number 1.
Yeah. For me, Mike's legacy is unique because it's not confined to a single division. He obviously closely associated with IG, but he was a legitimate threat in singles and a championship caliber player in teams. And few competitors were able to remain relevant across all 3 major divisions for as long as Mike did. I mean, he could headline an Inner Geekdom title match one month, make a singles tournament run the next, and then compete for Teams Gold alongside Chance. And sometimes he did all 3 of those things at the same time, in the same month. It's crazy. His versatility made him one of the most complete competitors the league ever produced, if not the most complete competitor the league ever produced. But just as important as all of that was corruption. Not just the team with Chance, but the corruption storyline, which became one of the defining narratives of the era. Then it turned into the faction era. Mike's corruption movement evolved into a full-fledged faction that influenced years of Schmoedown storytelling and helped establish the faction system as the central part of the league. Corruption became synonymous with ambition, manipulation, success, and championship contention, producing iconic moments, title runs, and some of the most memorable rivalries in Schmoedown history. Mike played many roles in the Schmoedown. Since his debut, he was a hero with the DC Movie News crew. Then he became the villain. Then he was a champion and a teammate. He was a leader of corruption. He constantly found ways to remain at the center of the conversation. His legacy isn't just that he won championships. It's that for several years, the story of the Schmoedown ran directly through him. And so that's why he's my number 2.
Absolutely, and not only that, he was a hero and villain. Almost became a hero again against Chandru Dandapani as well when he played that match. He kind of became a middleman, like not purely hero, not purely villain. And I would argue he was a pretty good hero. He was one of the greatest villains of all time, and he was a pretty good middleman when he started to become a hero because people started beloving him again as well because he kept winning. And and it was hard not to kind of like feel for him and understand why he became a villain, especially because that villain turn came after that JT Rachel Cushing loss.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our top 10s.
Yeah, do you want to quickly go through just our 10 to 1?
Let's just recap our 10 to 1. You go first, Josh.
So my 10 is Chance Ellison, my 9 is JTE, my 8 is Clark Wolf, my 7 is Jeff Snyder, my 6 is John Roca, my 5 is William Bibiani, my 4 is Rachel Cushing, my 3 is Mike Kalinowski, my 2 is Dan Merle, and my 1 is Sam Levine.
My 10 is Ken Knapsack, 9 is Christian Harloff, 8 is Sam Levine, 7 is Kevin Smets, 6 is Ben Bateman, 5 is Dan Merle, 4 is Rachel Cushing, 3 is JTE, 2 is Mike Kalinowski, and 1 is John Roca. So what we want to know now is, who are your top 10 Schmoedown legacies in individuals, not teams? We are going to be doing top 10 team legacies later on, just not immediately.
Yeah.
I want to see those in the comments. I want to know who you guys would put. Which angle on the term legacy are you going to take? Are you going to be more like me and go for overall impact and cultural stuff, or are you going to be more like Josh and go strictly accomplishments?
Or do both.
Either way, or do both. Or do both. Either way, we want to see your top 10 Schmoedown legacies, individual legacies, in the chat. In the comments, excuse me, not the chat. We're not live. It's late at night, guys. It's late at night when we're recording this. So, Josh, where can people find you?
You can find me here on the monthly This Was the Schmoedown. And hopefully I will be doing a victory lap on the step back for my Knicks. I'll be a little insufferable. I apologize in advance, but I think I deserve to be, especially with this Knicks team and how long I've waited for it, my whole lifetime basically. Yeah. So I will absolutely take it. So I'm so happy right now. And it's going to be a very depressing state if the Knicks somehow blow this and I have to go on the step back.
Don't even think about that. Don't even think about that. You guys are up 2-0. You're going home. You're doing good.
Listen,
I gotta hope that Danhausen doesn't reverse the curse, because Danhausen, since he reversed the curse and took the curse away from the Knicks, you guys are unbeaten. So just stay calm and everything will be okay.
I can't get my hopes up too much until I finally see it, because it's like, especially as a fan who has been cursed with this Knicks, and like finally I love this team and I believe we're going to do it. There's just always a small worry in my head where it's like, I got to prepare myself for the worst, because if it blindsides me, I may never recover.
Yeah, I can understand that. I went through that with my Nuggets. They'd never won, and then they finally did, but I couldn't believe that it was actually happening until probably about 3 days after they won. Yeah. And I just went through that with my favorite soccer team, Arsenal. They hadn't won the title in 22 years. I've been a fan for 20 years. I'd never seen them win the Premier League. And I sat here for like 3 days going, did that actually happen?
They made it close at the end. They did. They made it very close at the end, yeah.
But they won, and I think the Knicks are going to win. I do. I think the Knicks are going to win.
I hope so.
So check Josh out on the Step Back. That's over on Good Friends Better Rivals, our sister channel. Goodfriendsbetterrivals.com is how you can get there pretty easily. Please subscribe over there and subscribe here to this channel, the post credits, where you will get another episode of This Was the Schmoedown next month, hopefully. Things are a little crazy because we're doing a lot of World Cup stuff over on Good Friends Better Rivals. So if you're into soccer and the World Cup, please come check us out over there. We're doing a lot of watch-alongs and stuff like that. And you can find me on that channel doing a lot of that in the next month. And you can find me on this channel doing the Pulse and doing the Rewatchers Council MCU edition with Shug. Both of those are on hiatus until the end of the World Cup. Or at least until the World Cup calms down enough that I can think about something else. So those will be coming back, but they're not happening for a while. And go check out Get Ready Gamers at getreadygamers.com, our new gaming channel. Ferris has been going through 007 First Light on the channel so far, so check that out. But until next time, everyone, we are out of here. Bye.